Human mechanic sneezed on sealed tomb. Ancient voice boomed. The heir has returned. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The ancient dust of Proxima B was unlike any other. It was finer, somehow more intrusive, and it had followed Jake Reed everywhere since he'd stepped off the transport ship 3 standard weeks ago. The human mechanic wiped his nose with the back of his gloved hand as he trudged behind the archaeological team, lugging a heavy repair kit through the narrow passage of the excavated alien structure. "Keep up, Reed," called Dr. Xenia Volkov over her shoulder. The expedition leader never slowed her pace, moving with the confidence of someone who had discovered 7 previously unknown alien civilizations. "The environmental systems on Level 3 have been fluctuating again, and we need those repairs completed before the ambassador arrives tomorrow." Jake suppressed a sigh. He hadn't signed up for this. His contract with Galactic Unified Mining was supposed to have him fixing harvesters on the methane platforms of Titan, not tinkering with ancient alien tech in some newly discovered ruins. But the corporation had temporarily reassigned him when the original mechanic for this expedition suffered an unfortunate run-in with Proxima B's local wildlife. "Yes, Doctor," Jake replied, quickening his pace. The passage widened into a vast chamber, its walls covered in strange, swirling patterns that seemed to shift under the portable lights. Alien script, unreadable yet somehow familiar, ran in precise lines between the patterns. Dr. Nakamura, the team's xenolinguist, hovered near one wall, his scanner working overtime to capture the intricate symbols. "Fascinating," he murmured. "The language structure shows similarities to the artifacts found in the Centauri system, but the script itself is entirely unique." Jake had no interest in ancient alien languages. He was here to do a job, get paid, and hopefully get reassigned back to something that made sense, like a proper engine that followed the laws of thermodynamics. He glanced at his tablet, displaying a 3-dimensional map of the structure with a blinking red indicating the malfunctioning environmental unit. "I'll head down to Level 3 then, shall I?" Jake said, not expecting an answer as the scientists were already deep in their discussions about cultural implications and historical significance. Dr. Volkov waved a dismissive hand. Yes. Remember, no touching anything that isn't related to the environmental system. Some of these artifacts are over 50,000 years old." Jake resisted rolling his eyes and instead gave a mock salute before heading toward the gravity lift at the chamber's center. The lift was one of the few pieces of modern technology installed in the ruins, a concession to practicality over preservation. Even so, Dr. Volkov had insisted on a model that could be removed without damaging the site once the expedition was complete. The gravity field hummed as it lowered Jake to the 3rd level. Unlike the upper chambers, which had been partially excavated before his arrival, this level had only been accessed a few days ago. The air was staler here, carrying a strange metallic tang that the environmental systems hadn't yet filtered out. Level 3 was different from the others. While the upper levels showed signs of habitation, what the xenoarchaeologists interpreted as living quarters, communal spaces, and work areas, this level had a different purpose entirely. The corridors were narrower, the ceiling lower, and the walls were made of a different material, something darker and more solid than the pale stone above. Jake followed his map through the winding passages. The red that led him deeper into the structure than he'd been before, past chambers filled with strange objects under protective fields established by the science team. Finally, he reached his destination, a small junction where one of the portable environmental regulators had been installed. The unit was standard issue, designed to maintain consistent temperature, humidity, and oxygen levels throughout the excavation site. According to the diagnostic readout, it was working at 62% efficiency, not critical, but definitely in need of maintenance before the diplomatic delegation arrived. Jake set down his toolkit and got to work, losing himself in the familiar routine of checking filters, clearing dust from sensors, and recalibrating the airflow parameters. This, at least, made sense to him. Clear problem, clear solution. Not like the endless debates among the scientists about the meaning of some squiggly line on a wall. He was just finishing up, the regulator now purring along at 97% efficiency, when he noticed something odd about the wall behind the unit. Unlike the other walls in this section, this one had no markings, no patterns, and seemed to be made of a slightly different material, smoother, with an almost metallic sheen under his work light. Jake ran his fingers along the surface, feeling a subtle difference in temperature. It was cooler than the surrounding walls, despite being right next to the environmental regulator. "That's strange," he muttered, tapping his knuckles against it. Instead of the dull thud he expected, the sound was hollow, resonant. Jake's curiosity got the better of him. He pulled out his scanner and ran it over the wall. The readings confused him. According to the device, there was a space behind this wall, a large one, but it wasn't showing up on the expedition's structural maps. "I should probably tell Dr. Volkov," he said to himself, but then hesitated. The archaeologist had made it very clear that Jake was here to fix machines, not make discoveries. The last thing he needed was a lecture about overstepping his bounds. But something about this wall nagged at him. It wasn't just blank, it was deliberately blank, in a structure where every other surface was covered in intricate patterns and script. It stood out precisely because it was trying not to. Jake examined the edges more carefully. Yes, there it was, a nearly invisible seam running around what he now suspected was some kind of door or panel. He traced the seam with his finger, looking for any kind of mechanism or control that might open it. Finding nothing, he stepped back, considering his options. The smart move would be to pack up and report this to Dr. Volkov. But a small, rebellious part of him wanted to figure this out himself, to prove that he wasn't just a pair of hands good for fixing broken gadgets. As he contemplated his next move, Jake felt a familiar tickle in his nose. The cursed Proxima B dust had found its way through his filter mask again. He tried to fight it, but it was no use. "Ah, achoo!" The sneeze echoed down the empty corridor. Jake sniffled and wiped his nose, feeling slightly embarrassed even with no one around to witness his minor explosion. Then something happened that made him forget all about his embarrassment. The blank wall in front of him shimmered. A soft blue light began to trace the seam he'd discovered, spreading until it outlined a perfect rectangle in the center of the wall. Symbols appeared along the edges, glowing with the same blue light, pulsing gently as if awakening from a long slumber. Jake took a startled step backward, his toolkit forgotten at his feet. "What the—" Before he could finish his thought, the outlined section of wall receded slightly and then slid silently to one side, revealing a chamber beyond. The blue light spilled out, casting eerie shadows in the corridor. Jake stood frozen, torn between curiosity and caution. The protocol for discovering new chambers was clear. Secure the area, notify the expedition leader, wait for the specialists to document everything before proceeding. But something about the blue light seemed to call to him, drawing him forward despite his better judgment. He took a cautious step toward the opening, then another. The chamber beyond was small, perhaps 5 meters across, with a domed ceiling. The source of the blue light was a pedestal in the center, on which rested what appeared to be a metallic sphere about the size of a basketball. The sphere was unlike anything Jake had seen in the ruins so far. While most artifacts here had the organic, flowing aesthetic common to the patterns on the walls, this object was geometric, precise, its surface divided into interlocking hexagons that shifted and realigned as he watched. But it wasn't the sphere that made Jake's heart nearly stop. It was what happened as he fully entered the chamber. A voice, deep, resonant, and somehow ancient, filled the room, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It spoke in a language Jake didn't understand, the words flowing like liquid metal, beautiful and alien. Then, to his shock, the voice shifted, the syllables transforming until they became recognizable as standard galactic, the trade language used throughout human and allied alien space. Genetic sequence recognized. The Heir has returned. Jake blinked, wondering if he was hallucinating. "I'm sorry, what?" The sphere on the pedestal pulsed brighter, and the voice spoke again. After 50 millennia, the bloodline endures. The heir has returned to claim the legacy. There must be some mistake, Jake said, glancing behind him, half expecting to see Dr. Volkov or another team member playing an elaborate prank. But the corridor remained empty. I'm just a mechanic. I fix things. I'm not an heir to anything. Genetic markers confirm lineage. You carry the blood of the builders, diluted but present. A beam of light shot out from the sphere, scanning Jake from head to toe. He yelped and tried to step back, but found himself unable to move, held in place by some invisible force. Initiating legacy protocol. Preparing knowledge transfer. Wait. Jake protested, his heart pounding. I don't want any knowledge transfer. I just came to fix the environmental regulator. The voice paused, and Jake had the distinct impression that the ancient intelligence behind it was confused. You are the heir. It is your birthright. Look, there's been a mistake, Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. I'm human, from Earth. My ancestors weren't alien builders or whatever you think they were. Partial match indicates hybridization. The builders seeded many worlds before the Great Silence. Your species carries their genetic legacy, dormant until now. Jake's mind reeled. Was this thing suggesting that humans were partly descended from the aliens who built this place? That was impossible. Humans evolved on Earth, not. His thoughts were interrupted as the sphere began to spin, its hexagonal sections realigning into a new configuration. The blue light intensified, and Jake felt a strange pressure building in his head, like the beginning of a migraine. Stop, he shouted, desperately trying to break free of whatever was holding him in place. I'm not ready for this. To his surprise, the pressure subsided, and the sphere slowed its rotation. The heir is not prepared. Initiation sequence paused. Jake sagged with relief. That's right. I'm not prepared at all. So maybe we could just forget this whole heir business, and I'll go get Dr. Volkov. She's the expert on ancient alien civilizations. The legacy is not for outsiders. It is for the bloodline alone. And I'm telling you, I'm not part of any bloodline, Jake insisted. I'm a mechanic from New Detroit. The most exotic thing in my family tree is a great-grandmother from Mars colony. The sphere pulsed again, and Jake felt a gentle probe in his mind, like fingers rifling through his memories. It wasn't painful, but the invasion of privacy made him flinch. Your understanding is limited by your education, the voice said, with what Jake could have sworn was a touch of condescension. The builders visited your world long before your recorded history. They left their mark in your genetic code, dormant but present, waiting for the right combination to awaken. And you think I have this right combination? Jake asked skeptically. Your genetic sequence triggered the awakening protocols. The match is not perfect, but it is sufficient. Jake ran a hand through his hair, trying to process what he was hearing. If what this ancient system was saying was true, it would rewrite human history, and possibly the history of every sentient species in the galaxy. The implications were staggering. Okay, let's say I believe you, Jake said carefully. What exactly is this legacy you keep talking about? The knowledge and power of the builders. The secrets of creation and destruction. The keys to the network that spans beyond the stars. Well, that was both vague and ominous. And what would happen if I accepted this legacy? The sphere spun faster. You would become more than you are. The dormant genetic material would activate. You would understand. Jake frowned. Become more than I am. What does that mean exactly? Would I still be me? You would be you, but complete. The missing pieces of your genetic heritage would awaken. That didn't sound too bad, but Jake had watched enough science fiction to be wary. And what's the catch? There's always a catch with mysterious alien legacies. The voice was silent for a moment, as if considering how to respond. The awakening is irreversible. Once begun, the process must complete. There will be pain as your body adapts. There will be confusion as your mind expands. Some heirs of the past could not endure the transformation. You mean they died? Jake said flatly. Their bodies rejected the changes. But your match is stronger than most. The probability of successful integration is high. How high? Approximately 87%. Jake laughed nervously. So there's a 13% chance this kills me. That's not exactly reassuring. All evolution carries risk, the voice stated matter-of-factly. The reward is proportional. Jake tried to think rationally, which wasn't easy with an ancient alien AI holding him in place and offering to rewrite his genetic code. I need time to consider this, and I should really tell the others what's happening. There is limited time. The awakening of this chamber has triggered protocols throughout the network. Others will come. Others? What others? Those who oppose the builders. Those who caused the Great Silence. They will sense the activation and seek to prevent the return. A chill ran down Jake's spine. Are you saying that accepting this legacy would put me in danger? You are already in danger, Heir. The choice now is whether to face it with the power of your birthright or without. Before Jake could respond, an alarm blared from his communicator. He glanced down at it, seeing urgent messages scrolling across the screen. Something was happening above, on the surface. The invisible force holding him suddenly released, and Jake stumbled forward, catching himself on the edge of the pedestal. What's going on? They have arrived sooner than anticipated. The Sentinels have detected their approach. Jake's communicator crackled, and Dr. Volkov's voice came through, tense and strained. All personnel, we have an unidentified spacecraft entering orbit. It's not responding to hails and doesn't match any known configuration. Security Protocol Alpha is now in effect. All non-essential personnel return to the surface base immediately. Jake looked at the sphere, which was pulsing with an increasingly urgent rhythm. What should I do? The choice is yours, Heir. But know this, the arrival is no coincidence. They have sensed the awakening. They come for the legacy, and they will not hesitate to destroy those who stand in their way. Jake's mind raced. He was a mechanic, not a hero. He fixed machines, not ancient alien conflicts. But if what the voice said was true, the entire expedition could be in danger because of what he'd accidentally triggered. His communicator chimed again with another message from Dr. Volkov. Reed, where are you? We're picking up strange energy readings from your location. Jake made his decision. Voice, or whatever you are, I need to warn my team. If these others are coming for us, they need to know. They cannot stop what is coming. But you can prepare them. Go, but return swiftly. The legacy must be claimed before the destroyers reach it. The force that had held Jake dissipated completely, and he backed away from the pedestal. I'll be back. Don't do anything while I'm gone. Time is short, Heir. The countdown to confrontation has begun. Jake turned and sprinted back up the corridor, his mind whirling with everything he'd just learned. He had to reach Dr. Volkov, had to explain what had happened, although he wasn't sure she'd believe a word of it. As he ran, he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just been thrust into the middle of something much bigger than himself, a conflict that had been dormant for 50,000 years and was now awakening because of a simple sneeze. His mother had always told him his allergies would get him into trouble one day. She just hadn't specified that the trouble would involve ancient alien legacies and mysterious enemies from beyond the stars. Jake reached the gravity lift and ascended to the upper level, where he found the archaeological team in a state of controlled chaos. Scientists were hurriedly securing artifacts while security personnel distributed weapons to those with combat training. Reed, Dr. Volkov spotted him immediately, her sharp eyes narrowing. Where have you been? And what did you do? Jake took a deep breath. Doctor, you're not going to believe this, but I need you to listen carefully. I think I just woke up something that's been sleeping for 50,000 years, and now we have company coming to make sure it goes back to sleep, permanently. Dr. Volkov's expression shifted from irritation to intense interest. Explain. Quickly. So Jake did, spilling out everything that had happened in the hidden chamber, from the sneeze that triggered the door to the sphere's claims about his genetic heritage and the ominous warning about those who opposed the builders. To her credit, Dr. Volkov didn't dismiss his story outright. Show me this chamber, she said when he'd finished. Jake led her and two security officers back down to level 3, his heart pounding as they approached the still-open doorway with its softly glowing blue light. But as they rounded the final corner, Jake stopped short. The door was gone. Where the entrance to the chamber had been, there was now only a solid wall, indistinguishable from any other in the corridor. "It was right here," Jake said, pressing his hands against the wall in disbelief. The door opened, and inside was a pedestal with a metal sphere that talked to me. Dr. Volkov ran her scanner over the wall. "There's nothing here, Reed. No cavity beyond, no different material composition, nothing to suggest a door ever existed." "That's impossible," Jake protested. "It was right here. The sphere said I had some kind of builder DNA, that I was an heir to their legacy." One of the security officers coughed uncomfortably. "Sir, perhaps the local atmosphere is affecting your perception. It happens sometimes on alien worlds." Jake turned to him in frustration. "I'm not hallucinating. Something really happened here, and now there's an unidentified ship coming for us because of it." Dr. Volkov held up a hand. "The unidentified ship is real enough. And there was an energy spike from this level that coincided with your presence here. Something happened, but without evidence. I can't confirm what." Jake stared at the blank wall, feeling a creeping doubt. Had he imagined it all? Was the security officer right about the atmosphere affecting him? No. The conversation with the ancient voice had been too detailed, too specific to be a hallucination. And the timing of the unidentified ship's arrival was too perfect to be coincidence. "Doctor, we need to evacuate," Jake said firmly. "If even half of what the voice told me is true, we're all in serious danger." Dr. Volkov studied him for a moment, then nodded. "The expedition director has already ordered non-essential personnel to return to the surface base. From there, we can evacuate to the orbital station if necessary." "What about the diplomatic delegation that's supposed to arrive tomorrow?" "They've been diverted until we can assess the situation." Dr. Volkov's communicator chimed, and she glanced at it. "We need to go? Now." The unidentified craft has launched smaller vessels. They're on an intercept course with our location. As they hurried back to the gravity lift, Jake cast one last glance at the blank wall. He was certain the chamber was still there, hidden somehow, waiting for him to return. The voice had said the legacy must be claimed before the destroyers reached it. But how was he supposed to claim anything if he couldn't even find the door? The answer came to him in a flash of insight. The door had opened when he sneezed, when his DNA had come into contact with the wall. Perhaps that was the key. But before he could test his theory, they were at the gravity lift, ascending rapidly to the upper levels. The time for exploration was over. Now it was time to survive. They emerged into the main chamber to find it nearly deserted. Most of the expedition members had already evacuated to the surface, leaving only a skeleton crew to secure the most valuable artifacts. "Reed," Dr. Volkov said as they prepared to leave, "I want you to know that I believe something happened to you down there. I've been studying these ruins for weeks, and there are inconsistencies in the architectural patterns that suggest hidden spaces we haven't been able to access. Whatever you found, or found you, it's part of something bigger." Jake nodded, grateful for her trust. "What do we do now?" "We evacuate with the others and let the military handle the unidentified vessels. Once the situation is secure, we can return and investigate further." But as they stepped outside the ruins into the harsh light of Proxima B's red sun, it became clear that evacuation might not be an option. The sky was filled with sleek, dark ships, their hulls reflecting the crimson light like drops of blood suspended in the air. They were unlike any vessels Jake had ever seen, not human in design, nor belonging to any of the known spacefaring species. The surface base, a collection of prefabricated modules a kilometer from the ruins, was surrounded. Humanoid figures in gleaming black armor moved with mechanical precision, herding the expedition members into groups. "Take cover," Dr. Volkov hissed, pulling Jake behind a jutting rock formation. The security officers followed, drawing their weapons. "Those aren't standard boarding tactics," one of them whispered. "They're searching for something, or someone." Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with Proxima B's cool atmosphere. "They're looking for the Heir," he said quietly. They're looking for me. Dr. Volkov's eyes widened slightly, but she didn't contradict him. If that's true, then we need to keep you away from them until we understand what's happening. I think I need to go back, Jake said, the realization crystallizing in his mind. The voice said the legacy must be claimed before they reach it. What if that's the only way to stop them? That's precisely what we're not going to do, Dr. Volkov said firmly. We don't know who these intruders are or what this legacy actually entails. Running back into a potentially hostile alien ruin is the last thing we need right now. But, no, Reed. We stay together, we observe, and we wait for an opportunity. The expedition had emergency protocols for situations like this. Help will come. Jake wanted to argue, but the determination in Dr. Volkov's eyes stopped him. She was right. Charging back into the ruins without a plan would be foolish. So they watched as the black-armored figures methodically searched the surface base. They moved with an unnatural synchronization, more like machines than living beings. Occasionally, one would pause and seem to scan the surrounding area, its featureless helmet turning slowly. They're not killing anyone, the second security officer noted. That's something, at least. They're looking for information, Dr. Volkov said. The expedition members are more valuable alive for questioning. Jake felt sick with guilt. These people were in danger because of him, because he'd let his curiosity override protocol. If he hadn't investigated that blank wall, if he hadn't sneezed on it. His thoughts were interrupted by a subtle vibration against his chest. At first, he thought it was his communicator, but when he checked, the device was silent. The vibration continued, growing warmer against his skin. Jake reached into his collar and pulled out the identification tag he wore on a chain around his neck, standard issue for all corporate contractors, containing his biometric data and emergency medical information. The metal tag was glowing with the same soft blue light he'd seen in the hidden chamber. What's that? Dr. Volkov whispered, staring at the glowing tag. I don't know, Jake replied honestly, but I think it's trying to tell me something. As if in response to his words, the tag pulsed brighter, and Jake felt a subtle pull, urging him back toward the ruins. One of the black-armored figures suddenly stopped its search pattern and turned directly toward their hiding place, its helmet emitting a series of clicking sounds. It's detected something, the security officer hissed. We need to move. But before they could retreat, a beam of intense red light shot from the figure's helmet, scanning the rock formation they were hiding behind. When the beam touched the glowing tag around Jake's neck, it flared brilliantly, and a shockwave of blue energy erupted outward, knocking the armored figure back. Run, Dr. Volkov shouted, no longer concerned with stealth. Back to the ruins. Jake didn't need to be told twice. He sprinted alongside the others, hearing the high-pitched whine of energy weapons discharging behind them. The entrance to the ruins loomed ahead, its ancient stones somehow more inviting than the open ground where the black-armored figures were now converging. They reached the entrance just as the first energy bolt struck the stone around them, sending fragments flying. Jake felt a sharp pain as one grazed his arm, but adrenaline kept him moving forward into the relative safety of the main chamber. Seal the entrance, Dr. Volkov commanded. The security officers rushed to activate the emergency force field the expedition had installed as a precaution against Proxima B's unpredictable weather patterns. A blue energy barrier shimmered into existence across the entrance just as the first of the black-armored figures reached it. It struck the barrier with its fist, causing ripples of energy to cascade outward. That won't hold them for long, one of the officers warned. These barriers weren't designed for military defense. Then we need to find a more defensible position, Dr. Volkov said, looking around the chamber. Or another way out. But Jake's attention was elsewhere. The identification tag around his neck was pulsing more insistently now, the pull toward the lower levels becoming almost painful in its intensity. Doctor, he said, his voice strangely calm despite the chaos around them. I think I know where we need to go. Dr. Volkov noticed Jake's transfixed expression. Reed? What is it? Jake held up the glowing identification tag. It's pulling me downward. I think it wants me to go back to level 3. That's not possible, said one of the security officers. It's just a standard issue ID tag. It doesn't want anything. Jake met Dr. Volkov's gaze. You saw what happened when that thing scanned it. This isn't standard issue anymore. A thunderous boom echoed through the chamber as the black-armored figures began a coordinated assault on the force field. Cracks of energy spiderwebbed across its surface. 2 minutes, maybe less, the second officer warned, checking the barrier's integrity on his tablet. Dr. Volkov made a swift decision. We go down. Now. She turned to the security officers. Rodriguez, Chun, set up whatever defenses you can to slow them down, then follow us. The officers nodded and began working with grim efficiency, rigging the chamber's portable equipment to create obstacles and choke points. Jake led Dr. Volkov to the gravity lift, his glowing tag pulsing more rapidly as they descended to level 3. The sensation of being pulled was now so strong that Jake almost felt he could navigate with his eyes closed. Where to now? Dr. Volkov asked as they exited the lift. Jake didn't answer immediately, letting the strange connection guide him through corridors he'd traversed earlier. The blank wall was exactly where he'd left it, still showing no sign of the doorway that had opened before. It was here, he insisted, placing his hand on the smooth surface. Nothing happened. Dr. Volkov frowned. Are you sure this is? Another boom reverberated through the structure, much closer this time. The officers must have fallen back. Jake's tag was now pulsing so brightly it lit up the entire corridor. He clutched it tightly, feeling desperate. Come on, open up. They're coming. The wall remained stubbornly solid. Jake pounded his fist against it in frustration. I'm here. I'm the Heir, remember? The one with the builder DNA, or whatever. Dr. Volkov placed a steadying hand on his shoulder. Read. Jake, take a breath. Think. What exactly happened last time? What were you doing when it opened? Jake forced himself to calm down and think back. I was checking the environmental regulator. I noticed the wall seemed different. I touched it, scanned it, and then... Then what? Jake felt almost embarrassed. Then I sneezed. The dust got to me, and I sneezed. Right after that, the door appeared and opened. Dr. Volkov's eyes widened with realization. Your DNA. When you sneezed, microscopic particles containing your DNA would have contacted the surface. So what? I need to sneeze again. Jake looked around for something to stimulate his nose, but the environmental regulator he'd fixed earlier was working too well, filtering all the dust from the air. The sound of energy weapons discharging echoed from the level above. Rodriguez and Chun were fighting a losing battle. We don't have time to wait for allergies, Dr. Volkov said decisively. She pulled a small sample kit from her pocket, selected a sterile swab, and held it out to Jake. Saliva sample. Now. Jake understood immediately. He swabbed the inside of his cheek and handed it back to her. Dr. Volkov ran the swab along the blank wall, making sure to cover the area where Jake remembered the door being. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, just as they heard the gravity lift activating above them, the wall began to shimmer. Blue light traced the outline of a doorway, and symbols appeared along its edges. It worked, Jake exclaimed as the door slid open, revealing the small chamber with its pedestal and metallic sphere. Inside, quickly, Dr. Volkov urged, pushing Jake through the doorway. She followed close behind, turning to look for the security officers, but they were nowhere in sight. The door slid shut behind them just as they heard the sound of armored footsteps in the corridor outside. The chamber was exactly as Jake remembered it, dominated by the pedestal with its shifting metallic sphere. The blue light seemed to intensify as they entered, pulsing in time with Jake's glowing identification tag. Return of the Heir confirmed. The ancient voice boomed, filling the small space. Accompanied by an outsider. Dr. Volkov startled but quickly composed herself. Years of xenoarchaeological work had prepared her for the unexpected. Fascinating, she murmured. A fully functional ancient AI system. Incorrect, the voice responded. This system is not artificial. It is a preserved consciousness, the last of the Builder Guardians. Jake stepped forward. We don't have much time. Those things outside, you called them destroyers? They're here, and they're trying to get to us. The Sentinels have detected proxies of the Void Lords. They seek the legacy, as they have for 50 millennia. Void Lords, Dr. Volkov repeated, her scientific curiosity evident despite the danger. Who are they? Those who oppose the Builder's vision. Those who believe entropy should claim all. They fear what the Builders created, what the Heir could unleash. A thunderous impact shook the chamber, dust falling from the ceiling. The Void Lord proxies were trying to break through the door. We need to do something now, Jake said urgently. You said I could claim this legacy. How? The sphere on the pedestal spun faster. The process requires direct neural connection. The Heir must touch the core and accept the burden of knowledge. Jake hesitated, remembering the warning about the risks. You said there's a chance this could kill me. Circumstances have changed. The presence of Void Lord proxies increases risk factors. Success probability now 73%. That's worse. Jake protested. Another impact rocked the chamber. A hairline crack appeared in the door. Jake, Dr. Volkov said quietly, whatever you decide, it needs to be now. Those things outside aren't going to give up. Jake looked at the spinning sphere, then at his glowing identification tag, and finally at the cracking door. What exactly will this legacy do? Will it give me some kind of weapon to fight those things? The legacy is knowledge and transformation, the awakening of dormant genetic potential. The Heir becomes the key to the network, able to control builder technology throughout the galaxy. Including defenses in this structure? Jake pressed. Affirmative. The ruins contain dormant security protocols that only the Heir can activate. Jake made his decision. All right, I'll do it. Dr. Volkov caught his arm. Wait, are you sure about this? We're talking about an unknown alien technology permanently altering your genetic structure. Do you have a better idea? Jake asked, gesturing toward the door, which was now showing multiple cracks as the Void Lord proxies continued their assault. After a moment, Dr. Volkov released his arm. Be careful. Jake approached the pedestal. The sphere's rotation slowed as he neared, its hexagonal sections realigning into what looked like a handprint. Place your hand upon the core, the voice instructed. The process will begin immediately. Jake took a deep breath and placed his palm against the cool metal surface. Immediately, the sphere lit up brilliantly, and Jake felt a sharp pain shoot up his arm, across his chest, and into his head. He tried to pull away, but his hand seemed fused to the sphere. The pain intensified, becoming a burning sensation that spread throughout his body. Jake cried out, his vision blurring. Through the haze of pain, he heard Dr. Volkov shouting his name, felt her trying to pull him back from the pedestal. But the connection held fast. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the pain vanished, replaced by a flood of information pouring into Jake's mind. Images, concepts, languages, and technologies. 50,000 years of builder knowledge compressed into seconds of transfer. Jake saw the builders as they once were, a race of beings who had evolved beyond physical form, existing as energy within constructed bodies. He saw their great project, the seeding of compatible genetic material across thousands of worlds, creating a network of life connected by shared DNA. He saw Earth, a young planet chosen for one of their most ambitious experiments. And he saw the conflict that arose when another ancient race, the Void Lords, discovered the Builder's plan and sought to stop it, fearing that the genetic network would upset the natural order of the universe. The war that followed had devastated entire star systems. The Builders, peaceful by nature despite their advanced technology, had been unprepared for the Void Lords' ruthless tactics. As they faced extinction, they had enacted a final plan, hiding their legacy in secure facilities across the galaxy, encoded to respond only to those who carried their genetic signature, waiting for the day when their descendants might reclaim their inheritance. All this knowledge flooded into Jake in an instant. When the connection finally broke, he stumbled backward, catching himself against the wall of the chamber. Dr. Volkov was at his side immediately. Jake, are you all right? Your eyes. Jake blinked, his vision clearing. He felt different, lighter somehow, yet more substantial. The chamber around him seemed sharper, more detailed, and he could see patterns in the walls that had been invisible before. "I'm okay," he said, surprised by the resonance in his voice. "Actually, I'm better than okay." He looked down at his hands. Faint blue lines traced his veins, pulsing with the same light as the sphere. His identification tag had stopped glowing and now appeared to be made of the same shifting metal as the sphere, hanging heavy around his neck. "The transfer is complete," the voice announced. "The Heir has awakened." The door to the chamber shattered inward, fragments flying across the room. 3 black armored figures stepped through the opening, their featureless helmets scanning the chamber before focusing on Jake. Dr. Volkov moved to stand between Jake and the intruders, but he gently moved her aside. "It's okay," he said with a confidence that surprised him. "I know what to do now." The central figure raised an arm, a weapon embedded in its gauntlet beginning to charge with red energy. It spoke in a harsh, grating language that should have been incomprehensible to Jake, but he understood every word. "Surrender the legacy, hybrid, or be destroyed with it." Jake answered in the same language, the alien words flowing naturally from his lips. "This legacy isn't yours to claim, proxy. Return to your masters and tell them the builder's work continues." The armored figure paused, seemingly surprised by Jake's response. Then it leveled its weapon. The void must be preserved. All anomalies must be corrected. Jake felt knowledge unfurling in his mind. Blueprints of the ruins, systems that had lain dormant for millennia, security protocols waiting to be activated. He reached out mentally, connecting to the structure around him in ways he couldn't have imagined possible before. "Last chance," he said, his voice calm. "Leave now, or I'll make you leave." The proxy fired its weapon. A bolt of red energy shot toward Jake's chest, only to stop midair, suspended in a field of blue light that had appeared around him. Jake smiled. Wrong choice. He made a gesture with his hand, and the suspended energy bolt reversed course, striking the proxy that had fired it. The armored figure convulsed as red lightning played across its surface, then collapsed to the ground, motionless. The other 2 proxies raised their weapons, but Jake was faster. With another thought, he activated the chamber's defenses. Panels slid open in the walls, revealing crystalline structures that pulsed with blue light. The proxies were suddenly lifted off their feet, suspended in midair by an invisible force. They struggled against it, their armored limbs moving in jerky, mechanical motions. "Your bodies are artificial," Jake said, accessing the knowledge in his mind. "Remotely controlled vessels for Void Lord consciousness. Your masters can't physically enter this dimension, so they built you to do their work." He stepped closer, examining them with newfound perception. Impressive technology, almost as advanced as the builders. But not quite. He made a twisting motion with his hand, and the proxy's armor began to crack, blue light seeping through the fissures. With a final gesture, Jake crushed the armored shells, reducing them to fragments that clattered to the floor. No blood, no organic matter, just broken technology and dissipating energy. Dr. Volkov stared at the remains, then at Jake, her expression a mixture of awe and scientific fascination. "What did you do? What did you become?" Jake turned to her, seeing her anew through his enhanced perception. The subtle genetic markers of builder heritage were visible in her too, though far more diluted than his own. Most humans carried traces, he now realized, but few had the specific combination needed to trigger the legacy protocols. "I'm still me," he assured her, "just with a better understanding of whom he is, and with some new abilities." He closed his eyes briefly, extending his awareness through the ruins. He could feel the remaining proxies moving through the upper levels, searching for them. He could also sense the expedition members being held at the surface base, frightened but unharmed. "There are 27 more of those things," he told Dr. Volkov. 12 in the ruins, 15 at the base. "And there's a larger vessel in orbit, carrying something much more powerful, a direct projection of Void Lord consciousness." "Can you stop them?" Jake nodded. The ruins have defenses I can activate. But first, we need to get your people to safety. He looked at the shattered doorway. Stay close to me. They moved back into the corridor, Jake leading the way with a confidence born of perfect knowledge of the structure's layout. The blue lines beneath his skin pulsed brighter as they approached the gravity lift. 2 proxies were waiting when they arrived, weapons raised. Jake didn't break stride. He simply gestured, and the proxies were thrown against the walls with bone-crushing force, their armored shells cracking under the impact. Dr. Volkov watched in astonishment. That's telekinesis. Actual telekinesis. Not exactly, Jake explained as they entered the lift. The builders integrated energy manipulation systems throughout this structure. I'm just directing them. He smiled slightly. Though I suppose the end result looks like telekinesis. As the lift descended, Jake's expression grew more serious. Dr. Volkov, once we reach the surface, things are going to happen very quickly. No matter what you see, I need you to trust me and get everyone as far from the ruins as possible. Can you do that? She studied him for a moment, then nodded. I'll trust you, Jake. The upper level was deserted when they emerged from the lift. Jake extended his awareness again, locating the proxies. They had converged near the entrance, apparently awaiting orders from their vessel. This way, he said, leading Dr. Volkov through a side passage he'd never noticed before. It ended in what appeared to be a solid wall, but Jake simply placed his hand against it, and a section slid aside, revealing a narrow tunnel sloping upward. Emergency exit, he explained. The builders weren't big on being trapped. They emerged from the tunnel 100 meters from the main entrance, hidden from view by an outcropping of rocks. From their position, they could see the surface base and the black ships hovering above it. The expedition members were gathered in the center of the base, surrounded by proxies. There's Rodriguez and Sean. Dr. Volkov pointed to the 2 security officers among the captives. At least they're alive. Jake nodded, his mind already reaching out to the ruins beneath them, activating dormant systems that had waited millennia for his command. He felt power surging through ancient conduits, energy building toward a critical threshold. Get ready to run to your people, he told Dr. Volkov. When I give the signal, get everyone at least 2 kilometers from the ruins. What are you going to do? Jake's eyes, now glowing faintly blue, fixed on the largest of the hovering ships. End this, once and for all. He stepped out from behind the rocks, fully visible to the proxies guarding the entrance. They turned toward him immediately, weapons charging. Jake raised his hand, the identification tag around his neck transforming, flowing like liquid metal until it encased his forearm in a gauntlet of shifting hexagons. Energy gathered at his palm, condensing into a sphere of intense blue light. The proxies fired. Jake deflected their energy bolts with a casual wave of his free hand, sending them harmlessly into the sky. Then he released the energy he'd gathered. A pulse of blue light erupted from his palm, expanding outward in a wave that passed through the proxies. Where it touched them, their armor seized up, locking them in place like statues. Now, he shouted to Dr. Volkov, get your people and run. She didn't hesitate, sprinting toward the base while Jake maintained his hold on the proxies. The expedition members, seeing the armored figures frozen, began moving cautiously at first, then with greater urgency as Dr. Volkov reached them and began shouting orders. Jake watched them flee, continuing to channel energy through the builder systems to keep the proxies immobilized. But he could feel a new presence entering the battlefield, something vast and cold and ancient, pouring down from the largest ship like black oil. The Void Lord had decided to intervene directly. The darkness coalesced into a towering figure, 3 times human height, its form constantly shifting between states of matter. Where it touched the ground, the soil blackened and cracked. Legacy thief, it thundered in a voice that seemed to bypass Jake's ears and speak directly to his mind. You meddle in forces beyond your understanding. Jake stood his ground as the darkness approached. I understand more than you think. I know who you are. I know what you fear. The Void Lord's form rippled with what might have been laughter. Fear? We are beyond fear, little hybrid. We are the void that awaits all things. The builders sought to cheat the inevitable end. Their legacy is an abomination. Jake could feel the expedition members retreating, Dr. Volkov leading them toward the safety of the distant ridge. Just a little longer. The builders didn't try to cheat death, Jake countered. They tried to ensure that life continued to evolve, to grow beyond its limitations. They seeded the galaxy not out of fear, but hope. Hope is the first delusion, the Void Lord said dismissively. Surrender the legacy, and your death will be swift. Resist, and your suffering will echo across eons. Jake smiled, feeling the final pieces of the builder defense system coming online beneath his feet. I have a counteroffer. He slammed his gauntlet hand to the ground. Blue energy surged from his palm, spreading through the soil in a network of glowing lines that raced toward the ruins. The entire structure began to glow, ancient symbols appearing on its exterior. The Void Lord's form contracted, perhaps sensing danger. What have you done? Activated the contingency plan, Jake said, rising to his feet. The builders knew they might fall, but they made sure their knowledge would survive. This facility isn't just a tomb or an archive. It's a beacon. The ground began to tremble as machinery that had lain dormant for 50,000 years roared to life deep beneath the ruins. The blue glow intensified, shooting upward in a column of light that pierced the clouds. A beacon for what? The Void Lord demanded, its form becoming more erratic as the blue light expanded. Jake's eyes blazed with inherited knowledge and newfound purpose. For others like me, heirs across the galaxy. You thought you destroyed the builders, but they're not gone. They're in us, in our DNA, in our potential, and now they're awakening. The Void Lord surged forward, tendrils of darkness reaching for Jake. I will end you before the signal completes. But the tendrils disintegrated as they touched the field of energy surrounding him. The Void Lord recoiled, its form destabilizing. You're too late, Jake said. The signal has already gone out. Across thousands of light years, other facilities like this one are activating. Other heirs are discovering their legacy. The column of light from the ruins pulsed, and a shockwave of energy expanded outward in all directions. Where it passed, the proxy's armor crumbled to dust. The Void Lord's physical manifestation began to dissolve, unable to maintain cohesion in the face of the builder energy. This is not the Yendi. The Void Lord's voice faded as its form dispersed. We are eternal. We will return. And we'll be waiting, Jake replied to the dissipating darkness. The ships above began to fall, their controlling intelligence severed by the energy pulse. Jake directed the ruins' defensive systems to destroy them before they could crash into the surface, reducing the alien vessels to harmless particles that rained down like glittering dust. As the blue light faded, Jake felt the surge of builder energy receding within him. The gauntlet around his arm reverted to the identification tag, though it retained its metallic, shifting appearance. The glowing lines beneath his skin dimmed, but didn't disappear entirely. He took a deep breath, feeling simultaneously exhausted and exhilarated. The knowledge from the legacy remained, a vast library integrated into his consciousness, waiting to be explored. Looking toward the ridge where the expedition had taken shelter, Jake saw figures beginning to make their way cautiously back toward the ruins. Dr. Volkov was in the lead, her face a mask of scientific curiosity and concern. Jake walked to meet them, wondering how he could possibly explain what had happened, what he had become. Dr. Volkov reached him first, stopping a few paces away to study him carefully. The proxies, the ships, that thing, they're all gone. Jake nodded. The immediate threat is neutralized, but there will be others. The Void Lords don't give up easily. And you? She asked, gesturing to his changed appearance. What happens to you now? Jake considered the question. The builder knowledge within him included coordinates to other facilities, repositories of technology that had been hidden across the galaxy. There were other heirs out there too, newly awakened by the signal, probably just as confused as he had been. I have work to do, he said simply. The legacy isn't just knowledge or power. It's responsibility. The builders created their network for a purpose, to help life evolve, to push back against entropy. I need to continue that work. Dr. Volkov nodded slowly. I suspected as much. Will you be leaving with us when the evacuation ships arrive? Jake looked back at the ruins, which had settled back into apparent dormancy, though he could still sense the ancient systems humming with renewed activity beneath the surface. For now, he said, I need to report to GUM, officially resign my position. And then, he smiled. I think I need to find others like me. The heirs. We have a lot to learn, and not a lot of time. Before you go off saving the galaxy, Dr. Volkov said with a wry smile, perhaps you'd consider letting my team study what's happened to you? The scientific implications are extraordinary. Jake laughed. I think that could be arranged. After all, humans should understand their heritage, don't you think? As they walked back toward the base, the other expedition members giving Jake a wide berth, he felt a strange peace settling over him. 24 hours ago, he had been a mechanic, fixing environmental regulators and counting the days until his contract ended. Now he was something else entirely, part human, part heir to an ancient legacy that spanned the galaxy. All because of a sneeze. His mother would never believe it. Then again, maybe she would. She'd always told him he was meant for greater things than fixing machines on the outer colonies. Turns out, she was right, just on a much larger scale than either of them could have imagined. 6 months later, Jake stood on the observation deck of the starship Ascendant, watching as the blue-green world of Kepler 442b grew larger in the view screen. According to the builder knowledge in his mind, this planet housed another facility, likely with another heir waiting to be awakened. Dr. Volkov stood beside him, her role transformed from expedition leader to ambassador for humanity in this new age of discovery. After the events on Proxima b, she had helped Jake navigate the political storms that followed his transformation. When governments and corporations had sought to control him and the builder technology, she had advocated for cooperation instead of exploitation. Now they led a mixed team of scientists, diplomats, and security personnel, the first official human builder cultural exchange mission. Their goal was to find other heirs, to learn from the builder legacy, and to prepare humanity for the eventual return of the Void Lords. Nervous? Dr. Volkov asked, noting Jake's pensive expression. He shook his head, just thinking about how much has changed. 6 months ago, I was fixing broken machines. Now I'm effectively an ambassador to an ancient alien civilization that lives in my DNA. You were never just a mechanic, she said. The legacy chose you for a reason. Jake touched the metallic tag around his neck, which had become both a tool and a symbol of his new role. Maybe. Or maybe I was just the guy who sneezed at the right moment. Dr. Volkov laughed. In my experience, the universe rarely works by coincidence. Speaking of which, our sensors are picking up unusual energy readings from the surface. Seems like this facility might already be active. Jake extended his perception, connecting to the builder network that hummed just below normal human awareness. Yes, there was definitely something awake down there. A presence similar to his own, but distinct. Another heir, he confirmed. And they're expecting us. As the Ascendant began its descent toward the coordinates embedded in Jake's builder knowledge, he felt a sense of anticipation. Each heir they found strengthened the network, expanded their understanding, and brought them one step closer to fulfilling the builder's vision of a galaxy where life continued to evolve and thrive despite the entropy that the Void Lords served. It wouldn't be easy. The Void Lords were ancient and patient, with servants scattered across countless worlds. But for the first time in 50,000 years, there was hope. The legacy had returned. The heirs had awakened. And it had all started with a human mechanic who sneezed on a sealed tomb. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.